but the host and producer of Busted, the storytelling show. Please welcome Scott Schultz.
We're former neighbors. We pass each other every day because there are two people that don't drive on the same block. So every day I would see him. As Josh mentioned, I'm the producer of a show called Busted, Los Angeles. It's true stories about getting around LA, told by people who don't drive. We've been doing this show for nearly 4 years now, all over the city. In fact, two of Adrian's stories that she told today, she's told at our show before live. We also do a web show with video presentations on a green screen where I capture the background footage on my tripod, my smartphone, no matter where the story takes place, and then we put it through the green screen that we then record at the studio in Boyle Heights. So that way we cover the entire city. Now we also do a podcast as well, and we just put out our first book. And we're always looking to expand beyond just the stories. But at our core, Busted is about the stories. It's a storytelling show. I never intended to be the bus story guy. That was just the theme of the first show. I figured, okay, it's a multi-use word. This month we'll do the buses. Next month we'll do being broke. The month after that we'll do something broke. Next month will just be rock and roll, because that's what the show was originally intended to be. But the first month that we did our show, I promoted 2 bus stops and high traffic areas of non-motorists, primarily bus stops. I would put flyers up there, and we did our first show, and it was a full house. And then the next month, when I went to the venue where we've been doing our residency from the very beginning, Stories, Books, and Cafe in Echo Park, and I said to the owner, yeah, so this month we're going to do rock and roll. And she said, yeah, and you're going to do the bus stories too, right? And we've been buses ever since. After about 6 or 7 months of doing the show, I thought, my gosh, we can't go any further on the theme of buses. I mean, it's a big theme, but where do we go with it? And at that point, I crossed paths with Josh here, and I discovered through doing the New Urbanism Film Festival for our first time that there's this thing called New Urbanism. I just thought there was like 10 or 12 people that liked bus stories. So that gave us a new life and a new kind of direction with the show, where we became less of a comedy show, less of a kind of rock and roll type show, and more focused on New Urbanism. The story that Adrian told about being harassed by the sheriff was on our very first web show. When I always get opportunities to expand beyond the simple storytelling, because it's Hollywood. There's a lot of great creative talent in this town, creative people, and I never say no. Whether it's being in a New Urbanism Film Festival, whether it's doing video with green screens and technology I'm not familiar with, or podcasts, or even if someone wanted to do Busted the Musical, I'd be down with it. We've done it with bands backing us up before, and we're always looking to expand that. But one of the things that people ask me all the time, and I've met a few other people that do that also collect New Urbanism and green commuting stories, particularly in the Bay Area. There's a woman named Eugenia Chen, has a site called the Muni Diaries. Fantastic blog. Does about 4 live shows a year, and it's focused on public transit stories that take place in the Bay Area. We're more focused on the live events and very little blog down here with Busted Los Angeles. But when she came down to Los Angeles to Torrance, I had to see her. I took 4 trains. I took the gold line, to the red line, to the blue line, to the green line, and then caught a bus. She was way down in Torrance. But I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to meet Eugenia. And she ended up flying all the way down before she even saw her family. We met at this little Starbucks in the middle of nowhere, down by the South Bay. First thing we said to each other, why do you do this? Because we'd never met anybody else that collects stories like this before. And we both pretty much had the same answer. One, I never intended to do this. And two, because it's important to document the history of cities in transition, especially a city like Los Angeles that was totally built ass backwards. As you saw from the first two presentations, this city was built wrong. And now we have a shortage of housing, and we have a shortage of proper public transportation. And so now we have the opportunity to fix that. We passed measures, there's funding going in, we're expanding the subways. But in order to do it right, you have to have the stories from the people who actually use the public transportation. If you rely too much on think tanks, it becomes a textbook, and textbooks aren't reality. If you try to just read a Spanish textbook and then you go to Mexico, you're not going to be able to communicate with people. You have to actually participate. And the way to participate is riding the buses. And the way to find out the needs and the true experiences of the people that ride the buses, that ride the trains, that utilize the bike lanes and the sidewalks on a daily basis is to hear their stories. And that's what I started doing. And the more you hear these people's stories, the more you identify with your own stories. For example, and I'm going to use Adrian's story again, because she's told the story on our show before, and because it goes on the theme of how everybody is very similar, and when we hear the stories, it allows us to tap into our own experiences. We've had shows before where the first story of the night might have touched on a version of harassment. Maybe, as I recall, it was like a high school or college kid hitting on another woman who's clearly not interested, but he's going to persist because he's an 18-year-old boy until he finally gives up and leaves. So I tell that story. Then the next person goes up, changes her story from what she was going to tell, and follows up on another harassment story. At Busted Shows, we always go with the motto, audience participation is always encouraged, but it's never required. Not only do I always encourage audience members to come up and share their stories at the end of every show, which, by the way, Adrian was the first audience member ever to go on stage at our very first show. She was the first person and first one to get her hand up, first one to get behind the mic. And she was on our very first appearance at the New Urbanism Film Festival. But what happens is, people would make comments from the audience and say, yeah, that's happened to me before. You know how I protect myself, and now you have discourse. And, some people might not realize that they're part of the problem, and they hear what's going on. And now they can be part of the problem, or part of the solution. And then by the time we get to the end of the show, where we're bringing up the audience members to do their anecdotes, we have a lot of give and take on one topic. And it's because, if you ride the bus or you ride the trains, you experience these stories in one way or another. You're either a witness, a participant, a protagonist, an antagonist. You're there. You've seen these stories. I've heard over 1,000 stories in the 4 years that I've done this show. We have the largest video archive that there is. We have over 200 videos right now of these stories. Once a year, I'll reach out to the Metro, and they're not fond of Busted at this point. Some people are, don't get me wrong. Like the bus drivers love us. They come to our shows, they tell stories. But the people in the tan tower, the suits, they get a little bit defensive. And I get it, because we're not all apples and cherries and chocolate and candy and flowers. They'd like it to be the good, the beautiful, and the community. And wouldn't we all? But to be an objective storytelling show, you have to have the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. You have to have the community and the outcasts, because that's what it's like when you ride the bus or you ride the train every day. But if you accept that and you can then enjoy the show, it's entertaining, it's comedic, it's dramatic, It's always, got something that you don't expect. But at the same time, you're going to recognize moments from your daily experiences. We like to refer to our storytellers and our audience members as bus ambassadors. It's really important to me to stress that the people at our shows are great ambassadors, not just as members of the bus riding and train riding community, but you're ambassadors to the city of Los Angeles, the state of California, and the country of America, because a lot of people that ride these buses, they're tourists. They've never been to America. They've never met a Californian or a Los Angelino before, other than people that are working for them in the tourism industry. So that experience with you on that bus might be their only experience with a Los Angelino, and that's what they take with them when they go on to their next place. Whether you're an awesome person or the biggest prick on the planet, that's going to be the impression that represents Los Angeles to everybody that they tell when they go back to where they came from. And so we always stress, be a good bus ambassador. And the people that do our show, they are great bus ambassadors. She's a great bus ambassador. So is Josh. He's a great bus ambassador. And I hope some of you guys are too. I mean, I know some of you guys are great urbanism ambassadors. I totally agree with every presentation I saw here today. Our goals are always trying to expand the stories in the archives. We want to leave it for 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when we're no longer here, when we're a perfectly functioning city, sustainable, to last for the next 2 or 3 centuries, and have those true stories as an oral and video document of the time when this city corrected itself and became more self-sustainable, more green, reduced its carbon footprint, and just became an altogether more functional city. So anyway, I hope you get a chance to check out Busted sometime. We have over 200, we have actually only 100 videos on YouTube right now. I'm kind of toning down on that a bit, but I keep Adrian's up there, and I'll put that on your site, by the way, so you can have her story on there too. And thank you, and I hope you come to the show on Thursday night. We're going to be on opening night at 9:30 p.m. at me. I just want to make sure I got it right. Thank you guys so much.
Excellent plug for the show.